I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. Are you a creative or are you an entrepreneur? We live in a world today where if you are a creative person, you're going to need to have some sort of entrepreneurial focus to figure out how to pay the bills. And we live in a world where entrepreneurs, if they want to reach an audience and grow their business, are going to have some kind of need for creativity, audience building, content creation. How do you choose between these two things? How do you mix those things together? What if they don't exactly mix? Today, I'm talking to a very interesting human being. Her name is Heather Parady. She is all about, in her day job, implementation and operation. She is a fractional COO. And if you don't know what that means, she's going to explain it in a little bit. But she builds the systems and the operations that help the businesses that she consults with grow and scale and become more effective. But she's fractional. Not all of her heart is in that kind of operational work. She's so good at it. And yet, what she really loves, what really lights her up, is creative work. She has social content. That's how I came across her on Instagram, on TikTok, that is so engaging. It's a blend of insights on leadership and creativity and even spirituality. She's racking up hundreds of thousands of views and loves that side of what she does. And she has found a way to balance these two parts of herself. If you're someone who is trying to figure out that balance or trying to figure out how to strike a fruitful imbalance, I think you're really going to appreciate the insights that Heather shares. This is a great conversation from a very talented and hardworking woman who has built an amazing business and an amazing platform with her own voice and her own insights. So here's my interview with Heather Parady. Excited to hear what you think of it. Hey, Heather, it's great to have you on the podcast.
I'm so excited. I love content creation, all that stuff. It's going to be fun.
Well, that's how I discovered you, your great content creation. But I don't want to start there. I'm saving that for later in our interview. Um, I want to talk about your bio, which I think is
Oh,
so
Lord Jesus. I
intriguing.
haven't looked at that in a minute. I don't even know what's on there.
No, but you say that you're a fractional COO to unconventional visionaries who are changing the world.
Mm.
And I just think there's a lot to unpack there. First, what is a fractional COO?
I just learned that term not too long ago. I mean, I've been doing this work, what I've been, my business for a while. And I got some coaching earlier this year on messaging. And he was like,
Mm.
"So you're a fractional COO." And I'm like, "Well, that sounds boring. What's that?" You know what I mean? Like, I get the
That's
operational
great.
piece. I
Yeah.
guess I don't know why I've never put, because you think of fractional CMO. I mean, I've hired a fractional CMO before, but I've never really thought about a fractional operations person. So
Right.
essentially, what I've been doing for the past few months, or past few years, excuse me. Have you heard of visionary integrator? Those
No.
terms? Okay, this is
Mm-mm.
interesting. So there's this book, um, and it talks about the different roles in leadership in a business. And you
Mm.
have the visionary, which is like, dude, I have this idea. We're going to launch this. And they're just spouting off
Mm.
dreams and ideas. And they're off the chain, right? We love those people. But what's hard with that is a lot of times the follow through is not there,
Yeah.
right? And so in a perfect world, we have a visionary who has just unlimited dreams and vision, unwavering spirit. And then we have an integrator
Mm.
where they come alongside and they're like, "Awesome, Josh. What do we need to do next to make that happen?"
Right.
Right? And so I'm a little bit of both. I think I'm more on the integrator side than the visionary
Mhm.
side, but I speak visionary. So I
Mm.
get it when folks are saying, "Hey, I wanna start a program for therapists in New York who wanna reach inner city school kids, and then we're gonna reach the whole nation." I'm like, "Let's go. Here's a spreadsheet." You know what I mean?
Right,
So
I
I've been
love
doing that
that,
work for
yeah.
a while. I didn't know that
Okay.
it was, that term would be placed on it. But fractional, meaning I'm only there for about 90 days to about 6 months.
So it's sort of like a sprint energy, kinda get them set up,
Oh, yeah.
launch something,
Yeah.
okay, amazing. Well, the way that you describe that's so helpful because the fact that you speak visionary, but then you help on that integration, implementation side
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense to me because my impression from just observing you on social media is like you seem so much more engaging and dynamic and like thought leader type person
Mhm.
than what I think of as a COO. So you're like a much less boring COO.
I should use that on my website. That's
You're
good.
fr No, so, I mean, that's a compliment, but it's just that's an interesting dynamic because a lot of times the people who have the skills to implement things and say, "Okay, let's actually create a plan.
Right.
Let's create the systems to get it done," and so on. They're, like, annoyed by all the kind of habits and style of the visionary person. You kinda
Mhm.
need both of those, skills in an organization or to get anything done, but a lot of times there's a clash between those 2. So it just makes so much sense that you'd have a little bit of both in you to be able to help people. That's really cool.
I'm gonna get deep on you. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, please get deep.
So I've been doing a lot of inner work trying to figure out the healthy balance between all of that because the operational side, I've noticed in myself, there's almost a servant leader martyr piece to it that's been ingrained in me
Mm,
for a long time.
okay.
And then the visionary side, I think that I know that I've been given the gift of communication and I like presenting and I'm one of the front people, but there's also too a lot of ego in that I have to be really mindful
Mm,
of when is my time for the spotlight or when is my time to yield to Josh and be able to like support his dream and finding like the balance of those two
mm,
gifts has been really interesting. And I don't know, I'm still navigating it. There's like a seasonal calling for me where sometimes I need to step into the visionary role and communicate and be the front person, and sometimes I
mm,
need to suck up my Heather ego and use the gifts that I do have, to
mm.
propel someone else's vision.
Have you struggled with, um, people wanting you to, like, join them full time, join their vision, build their thing, and then you keep, like, doing the freelance, have your own business?
Yeah. I mean, the my hope, I mean, it hasn't always happened, of course, but is to build really close relationships with these folks. Like, I really, when I first started off, and I'm sure every business owner can attest to this, you're just like, somebody hire me, you know? And now
Right.
I'm at a point where I'm really trying to draw in and call in the right people, the
Mm,
people who I just in really close alignment with. And the hard part of that is not just because I'm a passionate gal, I'll just jump ship and want to work with everyone. But I think the long term goal for me is to always do my own thing.
right.
I've tried doing the employee thing. I've tried, you know, working on it as a team member, and although that's sounds very virtuous, like I'm just too rebellious for that. I have to have freedom, you know?
That's great. That's great. Well, the other part of your, description, a fractional COO to unconventional visionaries.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about what an unconventional visionary leader means to you.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Is that like a nice way to say they're disorganized, or is that what does that mean?
You're
You're
writing
an
so much good copy
unconventional
for my
visionary.
website. No, several years ago, I podcasting was my very first medium into content creation. I've been doing
Hmm,
that for goodness, it was close to 6 years. I think, we're about at 1,000, if not over 1,000 episodes between all the different shows that I've hosted, and the very first one, I just clung to this word unconventional, and the reason for that is I started getting into personal development and down that freaking rabbit hole, which will just drag you
Mhm.
in. And I only saw one type of person. It was usually a middle-aged, rich white dude who was talking about, getting rich and leadership, which is fine. I mean, there's totally a place for that. I just
Yeah.
didn't see a lot of women. I didn't see different races or religious
Mhm.
backgrounds, Converse wearing tattoo folks, who are talking about leadership and personal development and growth. And
Mm.
so unconventional is a word that just stuck with me, more of a kind of need to want to be rebellious against the system. But the more I've gone down this path, I've kind of made a stake for it's less about the anesthetics of being unconventional and more about an unconventional approach to life, of
Mm.
going against the grain and questioning things, which I know you talk a lot about, and the freedom to be able to do that.
Mm.
So yeah, it started off external and it ended up kind of more of an internal statement. Or if you feel unconventional, a little bit against the grain, I'm your girl.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. Um, what triggers a small business or a larger organization to realize that they need someone like you to step in? I guess I'm just thinking about the signs that, they see where they're like, "We need this kind of fractional COO energy to help us."
You asked really good questions. The point. Hmm. I would say when you're frustrated with communicating, I think, to your team. I think that's where
Mm.
there's a lot of disconnect. Have you read E-Myth?
I haven't. I've heard about it,
Dude,
but
you've gotta
yeah.
read that book. It's
Okay.
it's literally game changing. I tell everyone to read that. But it talks about kind of a communication breakdown with
Mm.
visionaries and the implementation. Because if you talk visionary, you talk visionary, right?
Mhm.
It's usually possibility. And then when you talk integrator, sometimes it's boring. And so, it feels like you're
Yeah.
sucking all the life out of something. So finding the right fit for that is someone who can kind of bridge the gap there and be able to communicate to the team, okay, Josh is
Mm.
wanting to build this huge movement in his podcast and his vision is to reach this
Mm.
many people and blah 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 blah. Here's what that looks like for you day to day. Here's the
Oh,
system
interesting.
behind
Yeah.
that. Here's how we're going to
Mhm.
approach it. And leaders try to do that a lot and sometimes they do well, but sometimes they need a little bit of support.
That's really good. Is there often a size that you see in terms of the size of a team when that starts to be important, or
10
it
around
just
10
varies?
10 people,
Yeah.
10 team members, that's usually where it starts to break
Mhm.
down. Yeah. This just feels like an infomercial for Heather, man. Come on.
That is exactly what well, I'm fascinated by what you do because I really see the need for it. I've seen the need for it in many different groups that I work
I
with,
bet, yeah.
companies that I work with.
Yeah.
You can help with messaging, and you can help them build out their content and their website and all those types of things. But if they don't have the internal systems and structures, then it's going to crash and burn, right? So what you're bringing, I think, is really important.
It
I
feels
want to
so
talk
lame
about
though. Like I
oh,
really wanna, create some t-shirts that say, systems are sexy because, when you start saying to people I was just at coffee with a friend and he's trying to build out a marketing plan for his really cool storytelling event he's doing downtown. And I just couldn't help it. I was like, "Dude, you've gotta write out every single thing you do, month to month." And he just started crossing his eyes. He's like, "Oh, it sounds so boring." And I'm like, "But do you not
yeah,
understand that all your results are tied to what you do? And if you're not
yeah,
liking your results, you can look back and say, okay, well, last month I did XYZ, XYZ. Do I need to repeat that or let it go?" And this is really a
yes,
way to propel your visions and your dreams, not to suffocate them.
that's so good. That's really good. Yeah, the feeling that kind of those kinds of systems are just binding you and holding you back is it's the opposite, right? My dad always used to use the analogy of the string and the kite. It's like I feel like the systems are the string that anchor and actually allow the kite to soar.
Yeah.
um, but you have to have both. You really have to
Well,
have
if you
both.
look in that with creativity too, because I'm a creativity junkie. I love reading about the muse and how to all the kind of weird spiritual side to that. And it's so interesting to me how much of that is tied back to restraint. So if
Mm,
you're feeling like creatively stuck too, it might be just because there's too much possibility. And if you
yeah.
bring it back a little bit, like, I'm only gonna do in a real story, only gonna do reels in a chair, right? Or I'm only
Mhm.
gonna podcast sitting right there with people from Georgia, you know what I mean? Like, I know it sounds ridiculous,
Yeah,
but adding that
right.
restraint actually expands your creativity.
That's so true. Well, I wanna talk about your online persona and the content you create because that is how I found you. I'm scrolling through Instagram, one of your videos pops up, the way that you write them, the way that you deliver them, really grabbed my attention. I was really impressed with them. Um, how would you describe your videos? Because I would say they're we've been talking about your work as a fractional COO, um, but it's not like your videos are about operations. You're not popping on there being
'Cause
like,
that's
"Let me
not my
tell you about."
passion in life.
Well, well, so that's what I want to talk about. Like, how would you describe your videos? I think of them as like leadership insights, creativity kind of guidance. Like you're bringing in all these different sources, pop culture references, Aerosmith, Coldplay,
Yeah.
all types of different things, and then you give these really pointed kind of tips and guidance to people. But how do you think about it? Like when someone says, "What kind of content do you put on TikTok and Instagram?"
Thank you for saying all of that. I work my ass off on them, so every time somebody
I
says they
can
like them, 'em, I'm
tell.
like,
I can
thank
tell.
you."
It is a lot of work to make videos that sharp. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
man. So full transparency, because I think this is more helpful than talking about what's worked, is let me tell you what hasn't, is I've spent goodness, if you scroll,
Mm.
past all of those, you'll see hundreds of terrible, terrible videos. In fact, I shouldn't even be admitting this because, like, some of them I'm, like, thinking in my head, like, "You should go back and delete those." But I remember at the beginning of my podcasting journey, scrolling back to people I admire at the very, very beginning and being so encouraged to see how crappy their shows were. So I'm gonna leave them up, but I was like,
I
"Man,"
love
I was
it.
doing, like,
Yeah.
sketch comedy. I really wanna be a comedian, but it's just not my gift. I'm not funny. I've done so many different iterations, and what happened is I was doing everything Gary Vee said, I was putting in the work. I'm talking about hundreds of videos, a long
Wow.
time, spending my weekends, man, and I'm just like, not only it's not just about views and likes and followers, it's really not. It was just like it didn't feel
Mm.
right. It didn't feel like Heather, and I've really struggled finding my creative voice, and that's a whole nother conversation of, like, what is it that I wanna say?
Yeah.
Because I have, like, a similar background to you, and when I kinda lost what my I felt like my message was to the world, I didn't know
Mm.
what my message was anymore, even though I still felt a conviction that I had a message, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
So, I
of
was just
course.
throwing up stuff, and then finally I was reading all these books, and they were talking about restraint, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna sit my ass in this chair, and I'm gonna pull out a camera, and I'm going to sit there and not move until I know what I'm going to say." And so, the first video that I made, I didn't write, I didn't think about. It was something that if you and I were, like, chilling, and I would be something that I would bring up to you because I'm the type of person, I'm always talking about books or references and different
Yes.
things and making
Mm.
ties. That's just I
Yeah.
love it. So I did that video and all my friends were like, "Yo, Heather, that was actually super sick. Like, that was cool." So I kept doing it and it worked.
Wow.
So what am I doing online? I think the deeper thing is I'm trying to bridge together concepts that people are looking for versus the ones that have changed my life.
Mm.
Books, deep spiritual principles aren't really sexy. People aren't looking necessarily always for that unless they've already been bit by that bug. But if I
Mm.
can wrap some of that stuff in the hot topics like Lady Gaga or Bieber or whatever. By the way, do you know what Napoleon Hill said once? You know,
Right.
I can hopefully
Mhm.
tie some really deep truths and help some folks, but we'll see what happens.
That's fantastic. I love that. I have noticed that you'll hook people with something that's very, like, pop culture relevant, and then in the midst of that, you'll reference these other works, whether they're
Yeah.
more businessy or even a little spiritual, and tie it all together. So I think that's really incredible. What role does your content creation play in relationship to your business? Like, how do you just say, "I'm gonna put out the kind of content I love, and I'm gonna hope that that attracts, the right type of person," or how does that work?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Yeah, I'll reference coaches all the time because 'cause I'm always talking like mentors, coaches, whatever. But someone said to me that or they encouraged me to separate my clients from my audience and to be
Hmm.
okay with that, which is super countercultural, man, to, what everybody tells you because 'cause they're like, you want to top of funnel, grab your leads, and then
Mhm.
bring them down to an offer. And I think that works if you're a full-blooded entrepreneur. I'm
Mm.
not. I am a creative who has a business to support her creativity, and there's a very big
Oh my
difference
gosh,
there,
okay, wow.
right? So in
Mhm.
my case as a creator, I've had to separate clients and audience and be okay with that. And when I've tried pushing those together, it was really difficult because my clients don't give a rat's ass, man. They just want their funnel, working and figure it out. And my audience might not have the resources to hire me. So it's
Right.
okay to separate those 2. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, that doesn't make sense, right? If you're creative, it's freedom. So what comes from my reels? Lately, some good stuff. I mean, I've been having some cool opportunities for script writing and some other creative things,
Okay,
for some
interesting, yeah,
organizations, which I don't know what's
yeah.
gonna happen with that. That'd be awesome. But it's not directly tied to my business.
Well, that's what I was so it that makes so much sense as you describe it because as I was watching all this and then thinking about what you do, I was feeling that gap in a sense, that point of separation, and feeling like, "Boy, I feel like the kind of people who would watch this and would wanna hire Heather would be like, coach me to be an amazing content creator or, get come
Yeah,
to our platform and be a content creator and so on. So you've separated those 2 things and you're not viewing your online persona or your online content as a funnel into your fractional COO work necessarily.
absolutely not. No. And like I told you at the beginning, and I don't mean to go against, I know we started really heavy with the fractional COO stuff. I don't, this is a seasonal thing that I've done for several years and I'm good at it. And I see
Mm.
myself doing it maybe for the next 3 to 5. But long term, Heather is a 65-year-old lady. I don't think I'm going to be in the grave with that. I'm a communicator and I want to take this stuff somewhere. Where it goes, I don't
Let's
know.
just clarify something. You're not 65 and you're not planning to die at 65. Is that
Oh, I hope, yeah, that's true. I like your
okay?
balloon, so what's going on there?
I don't know. Balloons just came up on my screen. I must have done some weird, symbol that triggered the app. Um, yeah, just the way that you said that made it sound like you were either 65 or you're planning to die at
I do
65,
need to be
and
more positive, don't I?
yeah, yeah. But the point is that you're not planning to do this long term,
Yeah.
which I think is which is so interesting because it's like, man, it can be so, I get so tired of you have to niche down, you have to lock into
Dude.
something, you gotta do something for the rest of your life, you gotta grind away at it, and I just love the fact that you're a creative person, but you can do this incredible work that has all this value, but then you're not wanting to just become a slave to the man doing that thing that you're good at. You also have this creative side that you wanna give, just let fly. And I feel like you're kind of hitting this really interesting balance in doing that, but it's not always like this perfectly clean, lines up with all the kind of business coaching advice that's out there.
Yeah, but again, I think it comes down to that question you have to ask. Do you resonate with an entrepreneur or a creative? And I honestly felt really
Mm,
a lot of shame around, when I was like, "I don't think I'm an entrepreneur." Because I've always put like, my business was there to support my creative work and the show and all the stuff that I was doing. It gave me freedom, there's that word again, to be able to do that. So I think you need to ask yourself, because some people just can't stop thinking about scaling and
right.
they're gonna approach stuff a lot different. As a creative, you need flexibility, you need seasons, you need shifts, you need change, and, you feel
Yeah.
suffocated without it.
This podcast is sponsored by the creative agency Clear and Loud. Whatever your business's product, service, or idea, we believe clarity changes everything. We help you clarify your strategy, your brand messaging, and your online content so that you reach the right audience and grow your business. If you're frustrated by an ineffective website, if your message is jumbled and confusing, and you're not getting the traction you want with your marketing, let's talk. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation by visiting clearandloud.com. Unpack that just a little bit more. Like someone trying to think through that. Like, am I more entrepreneurial? Am I more creative? What does that mean for how I think about my career and the work I do and so on? Because I feel like that's a tension a lot of people feel, especially because these days, entrepreneurs need to be creating to build a platform. I mean, you're on Twitter and these guys that are running these incredible startups, they're creating tons of things. They're putting
Yeah.
out all this content. So there's like so much overlap, but how would you advise somebody to sort through those different priorities or options?
So this is what happened with me, and maybe you'll find yourself somewhere in it. I had a show with a friend of mine who that the show blew up. We had
Is it a TV show or a
I'm
podcast or
sorry. Yeah, it was a podcast. It'd be cool if it was a
okay.
TV show, wouldn't it? Sounds way cooler. But the podcast blew up. We hit a niche in a really, really critical time and had like 1,000,000 downloads in a few months, and it was just like stupid. It was
Oh my
phew.
gosh.
When we immediately became business partners because when the show reaches that kind of level, then you
Mhm.
have sponsors and there was money coming in, and we immediately started having to have conversations that was a little bit more in depth than, "What do you wanna talk about this week?" You know?
Right.
He immediately went to every decision, every meeting we had, it was about the next sponsor or how we could scale this, or it was very business, very, very, very
Mm.
my every meeting, I wanted to talk about the structure of the show and how we can improve retention and, some of the creative choices, and there was so much butting of heads with that because there were some
Mm.
decisions that were a better business decision but would hurt our creativity and vice versa, and I would be fighting for the creativity of the show and, what we were building as a brand, and he
Yeah.
would be fighting for the money.
Mm.
Now, neither one's wrong. Now, at first,
Mhm.
like, 'cause I was getting my feelings hurt, I'm like, "He's wrong," right? But the more I
Right.
started thinking about it, I'm like, "He has a gift, and his gift is different than mine." So,
Mm.
when I tell that story, when you think about if that were you, where would you probably fall in line? If sponsors were coming and you had a chance to make a lot of money from a show, would your mind every single day, would you be thinking
Mm.
about how do we grow this business of the show? Or
Mhm.
would you be excited thinking, "Oh my gosh, I get to podcast and get paid for it. Like, how can we make this show better?" Like,
Mm.
which camp are you drawn a little bit more towards? And I think that might be helpful to be able to identify
Mhm.
which one you are.
That's really good.
Which one would you be, Josh? I'm curious.
Oh, I think I would definitely lean creative with the ability to do the entrepreneurial thing, but
Yeah.
never really the desire to build the machine that scales.
But you know what's hard
So,
about that? It's been hard for me, is letting go of the money part and saying that
mm,
I might it's okay that I don't wanna be a multimillionaire
mm,
or even a millionaire, like,
right.
because I don't know if you've felt this, I've felt a lot of pressure entering into this space that if you're serious, you're going to scale to a certain point,
Yeah,
and admitting that maybe I don't want that and maybe I just wanna have a nice life and make things. Is that okay to say that? I mean, of course it
right.
is, but I have felt like a lot of resistance around that.
Yeah, for sure. Because the people who you want to learn from and so on are definitely pushing that, build something that can scale and
Yeah.
yeah. That's I think that's a really good insight. It's not I like the way that you even describe it. It's kind of a leaning because it's not that you don't need a little bit of both and need to honor both of those parts of yourself or um because to even to be a successful, not, successful air quotes, creative, you do need to fund that in some way. So there has
Totally.
to be this sort of entrepreneurial side of it, but it's almost like becoming entrepreneurial and capping that and saying, I'm okay with making this amount and putting in this kind of effort, and I'm going to stay there, and then I'm not going to try to hire 10 people or, whatever it might be.
Just
I see
talk
that a
into it.
lot where, yeah, just where people, they end up building a business and you know, they make it bigger than where their joy is or where their sweet
Mm,
spot is, and there's like all the complexity that comes into it. And suddenly they're not even doing the stuff they really love. But then for another person, they've got a different gift and they love to get to that point.
yeah.
So it's also individual. I want to ask you though about your videos because I'm super impressed
Oh,
by
yay,
them.
let's talk.
I mean, I'm assuming you just like script all that out pretty carefully beforehand.
Yep.
And then I'm just wondering, like, even logistically, do you do all the editing and
Yep.
all of that?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
So, again, back to the creative versus the entrepreneur. I said that super country, entrepreneur. So here's like one of my scripts right here. This is
Okay,
literally what I
cool.
do. It's always written on one page,
Mm,
because one page is usually about a minute if you can keep it to a page. I do everything, and this is why the writing, the shooting, the editing is all part of telling this story. And
mhm,
again, for me, I'm not trying to drive leads to a landing page. I'm trying to become an excellent communicator and storyteller.
mm, mhm.
And I get hit up all the time. People are like, "You want me to edit your videos and all this?" I'm like, "No, Paul, get away from me." Because not that I mean, I'm a mom. Like, I have a freaking insane busy business and a small team, and
Yeah.
like I don't have time, like, last night up till 8 o'clock editing an Aerosmith video or whatever, um, but if I don't learn beats, if I don't learn
Mm,
transitions, I'm robbing myself, and again, this is just me, of that storytelling element, and that's what I'm trying to freaking nail. So, I
mhm.
do the writing, I do the shoot I mean, I even, like, focus myself with a pillow, like, I do everything from beginning to end. I do have a VA who shout out to Ruthie, who will I'll give her my script and I'll say, "Okay, I have Rob Bell coming on. I need some images of Rob Bell. I need the timestamps to this and this," and she'll put everything in a drive for me, and that saves me a little bit
Mm.
of time, but I do everything else.
So impressive, so impressive. Um, for people who are listening and maybe there's something that they want to dive into, whether it's content creation or some idea that they're trying to put out or a business they're wanting to start, you advocate for doing stuff before you're ready.
Yeah.
Could you share an example from your own career where this philosophy was particularly impactful?
God, there's so many. I feel like it's like every single day. I'm doing things before I'm ready. I mean, even just so back it up to when I very first started my business. I just started off as a freelancer. I was a therapist and felt a nudge to go the unconventional path and start my own business, but I didn't have clients. I didn't have a developed skill set. I didn't have anything, but I had to
Mm,
make money. So I just looked at the skills that were in my hand and I was like, okay, I'm just going to I could edit videos and podcasts, and I was a photographer. I could do some of this stuff. Um, Folks started asking me for more and more things. And I don't say this is a good when you're a little more seasoned, but at the very beginning, do you know how to run an email campaign? Heck yeah, I
sure.
do. Of course. Do you know how to build a website on WordPress? Yup. Now, again, I now that's called distraction because I have a developed skill set and I'm more
Right.
confident and, whatever. But when you're very first starting off, I highly recommend that, yes, because if you're responsible, you're committed, you're passionate, you're gonna figure the hell out how to do it.
Mhm.
And what does that do? That gives you another skill set that you can market. So that's a practical way in business. And with video or content and all that, people are and my heart just, like, hurts. I've done these little real masterminds and folks who are first time on camera, and they're so scared, and I get it. I mean, if you think about it, and I say this all the time, we're the first generation to go through figuring out a digital identity. What does it mean to be a
That's true.
human being on the internet? I mean, of course
Mhm.
it's weird.
Yeah.
Um, the only way you're not gonna wake up one day and be like, "Oh, I'm hot on video. I look good. I like myself." What happens is you get used to it and
Mm,
the nitpicking becomes less. I still nitpick the
mm,
hell out of myself, but I'm
mm.
not gonna hesitate to push record, but that only happens after years and hundreds of videos.
Well, you talking about the old videos, I love that you've left them up there because
Don't
it
scroll,
is
okay?
really
I should have told you.
I'm definitely gonna scroll. I'm gonna scroll so hard into the No, because it can be so discouraging when you're starting out, for people. It's like, "Oh, here's this incredibly high bar. This person's
Yeah.
doing," and just to see like, "Oh, there's an evolution. There's a process that's unfolded," is just encouraging. So, I think that's really good. Well, let's talk about one of your videos. I was watching this one where you talk about Gary V's answer to a question that you
Mm.
posed through. I think someone else was interviewing him, but he basically asked you, "Hey, do you have a question for Gary V?" And you asked about consistency versus trying new things. You'd been doing your podcast, I think 500 episodes, and you were putting in the work to be consistent. Could you
Mm.
share the answer that Gary V gave and kind of the lesson that you took from that?
Totally, man. So, your girl's the type of person that if you're like, you know, the key is consistency. You need to eat this bread every single day and drink this amount of water. I will die doing it.
You just
I don't
keep
mind.
going.
I will keep going and I will never stop. Um,
Uh,
yeah, so Gary, I'm a huge fan of him and I think he's super misunderstood a lot of the times, but he speaks to a crowd, an audience that's starting off. He's not speaking to and I think it's people missing his message. He's not
mm,
speaking to everybody. He's speaking to the folks eating Cheetos on the couch. So he preaches consistency constantly,
mm,
like, just show up, keep doing it, don't look at results, because he's trying to
mhm.
get the new person off the couch. Now,
Yeah.
there's a point, and your girl just ran on past that, where that becomes ignorance and you start becoming
Mm,
blind to whether something's working or not. And so I just stepped on the gas, man, and I was pumping out episodes. I mean, every Saturday night for years, even to this day, I'm here producing podcasts. I put in the work and my numbers were just like, it was like a slow, slow growth, but it was
mhm,
not what I was expecting at all. And I'm like, what the hell? I've interviewed cool people. The show quality is great. So what Gary ended up saying to me indirectly through my friend was, at 500 episodes, it's time to pivot. That's not the normal Gary V answer you're going to hear.
yeah, it's true. I was surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was so much freedom in that because I
Mm,
realized, and I said in the video, that you are still consistent even if you shift. It's
mhm.
about not quitting
Right.
altogether.
Right.
You know, I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a runner. I don't know why I'm doing this. I have medals over there. I run a lot, and I get pissed because there's these sprinter people, and they always pass me. I'll do a steady pace, and I'm proud of myself, then I'll see homegirl run past me, and she's just busting ass, and then she'll slow down, and I'll pass her. Without a doubt, the sprinters always end up passing me as a
Mm,
pacer.
mm,
Um, I'm kinda slow too, but it's this idea that sometimes you sprint, run, change course, and you can still
mm.
sometimes beat people to the finish line.
Right. So, taking Gary V's advice to, if you've done 500 episodes and you're not getting the results you want, what did it look like for you to pivot? What did you do?
I quit that show and started that other one with that guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever happened to the show with the other guy?
I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I'm
Really?
gonna tell you.
Okay, please.
Well, it was an NFT show.
Oh my
Need I say
goodness.
more?
Would this happen to be around 2020, 2021, or
Yeah,
what
we
was
were the
it?
first NFT show to start, and so as you can imagine, we started in August, and in January, that was the number 1 search term, and anytime you put in, "What is an NFT?" our show popped up, so you can imagine.
Wow. No wonder your friend was really concerned with the sponsors and the financial side of it. There was a lot happening back then.
Yup. Yup.
Interesting. So you pivoted. You'd been doing the show. You pivoted. You started the NFT thing, which
Mhm.
absolutely hit in a big way. But then I
Mhm.
would imagine just with the fortunes of you know
We quit
crypto and
before then.
NFTs.
We quit before then. It was because of the, um no, we're totally cool with each other. We're still friends or whatever, but we just
Mm,
weren't good business partners because there was that
right.
clash between business and creativity, and we
Mm-hmm.
ended before all the NFT stuff crashed. Like, yeah,
Oh
Jesus.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you come out of it, like, with a bored ape or something? Like, did anybody send you anything, like, really valuable? I still have my NFTs that I bought them because I like them. I just
Did
wanna
you
say that. I
listen to
bought
our
them because I
show?
liked them. I don't think
You
so,
should have.
no.
It was pretty good.
Is it still out there in the
Yeah, that
universe?
God, this is getting embarrassing. Like, I'm telling you all this shitty stuff to go watch and listen to. Yeah,
Well, but the reason what I wanna get back to is what I'm more interested in is just how you applied that concept
yeah.
of pivoting. It actually did work really well for you because
Mhm.
there was tremendous success that came from that. The business side of it fell apart with that particular show, but then what was your next pivot when it comes to
What
podcasting
I'm
and
doing now, so just building my own brand, my content, just going back
okay.
into that
And is
world.
that and is that a social kind of first before podcast? Would you say that you kind of the leading edge is your social content?
Here, this is something I need to journal on later. No, not intentionally. I love conversations. I love what we're doing right here. This is such a gift. I mean, what a cool
Mm.
thing. I mean, I never would
It
have got to
is
meet
amazing.
you, like, otherwise, unless freaking podcast.
It's so true.
Um, I think what's interesting about social is, the storytelling element that I don't really get. I mean, I can in
Yeah.
podcasting, but it's different
Mhm.
writing a script. Uh,
Mhm.
it just so happened that my reels started popping, and now I'm incorporating the show a little bit more into it. But it's always been about a long form show. Like, I love that idea to be able to do that at scale. I think to answer your question, maybe give something tactical with the pivoting. What I'm testing right now, my friend always says testing, and I'm stealing that. I like it.
That's good.
Is giving myself a bandwidth of time when I'm trying something new to not change anything, and then give myself permission at the end of that time period to look back over it and make adjustments and look at it objectively.
Mhm.
So in
Mm.
that book I was recommending to you earlier, I think,
Mhm.
E-Myth, they talk about putting on different hats. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you have the visionary hat, sometimes you have the integrator hat, sometimes, you're the manager or whatever. But when you're a solo person or you just have VAs or whatever, sometimes you can't make objective decisions because you're all in your emotions or your creativity. So right now what I'm doing is I'm taking blocks of time and doing sprints, then
Mm.
looking back over data, making pivots, or giving myself permission to just freaking quit it.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. A couple of times in our conversation, you've mentioned the sort of spiritual side of things. And when I reached out to you, just because I was impressed with your videos, I didn't know that we shared a church background. Um, what is the link between spirituality and creativity that's been healing for you? What does that look like?
You need to go get a comfy blanket and cuddle up because
Great.
Lord
Get my
Jesus,
get my hot drink.
I
Yeah.
I love this. I love that you asked this question. I have found a certain sense of spirituality and home back into the creative space that
Hmm.
I felt like I lost when I left all of that. So when I left church and ministry, I was heavily involved in that whole scene. I mean, it was my
W
life. It was,
were you actually on staff somewhere? Were you or just,
oh, dude.
really involved in
Yeah, yeah. So I had a nonprofit. It was a statewide nonprofit where I led women and the sex trafficking team. We did that for years. I was also traveling, I spoke constantly, like, I did the whole thing. Um, the intention of my life was, even when I was a little girl, is I'm gonna be in ministry. God had a calling on my
Wow.
life, that was
Mhm.
everything. I mean, people
Mm.
who see me now doing what I'm doing, they're mildly concerned. They're like, "Are you okay?" 'Cause there's
Because they view you as someone that was supposed to use that gift in the church
yeah,
or in ministry. Yeah.
yeah, and, there's such I know you know this, like, there's such an identity loss when
Mhm.
who you wanted to be, thought you were, all that stuff's gone, and then, like I said earlier, the message part still hadn't left me, and part of me wonders, I'm like, "Okay, is that something I need to unlearn and deconstruct, like, this pressure to have, like, an impact in this world? Like, is that healthy?"
Mm.
But it still
Mm.
hasn't left me where I
Yeah.
wanna help people, I wanna use my voice in whatever way it is, but when you're not pointing it towards something anymore, saying, "That's the answer, this is the path," what do you point towards?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and this is gonna sound super woo for some of y'all, but when I started tapping into kind of this creative side and studying, I don't know if you've read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert or dug into any Rob Bell's stuff, but kind of
Mm. A little bit. Yeah.
Campbell, Joseph Campbell. Have you read?
Oh, the hero's
Yeah,
journey?
just kind of that
Yeah.
whole world, which is I know is
Mhm.
a little wooey, but when I started reading it, I was like, "Damn, this stuff is so oddly familiar." And it
Mm.
felt like God again in a sense
Mm.
where you start, becoming curious about something outside of yourself, but it was less restricted where we could point to what it was, and instead, you go, "Wow, isn't that cool? Isn't it cool that I don't know everything? Isn't it cool that we can experiment and play and, um, be childlike again?" And
Yeah.
again, I know it sounds super new agey and weird and woo or whatever, but creativity and spirituality for me, it was kind of like a tie back home to God, and I feel like I have a
Yeah.
stronger faith now where
Hmm.
I love God and I feel God everywhere now, but it's not so much of a, um, painful place. It's more of a
Mm.
curious, funky, awesome place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that journey. I think that's so I can relate so much to that sense of, "Whoa, I used to have this incredible overarching sense of purpose," you know?
Yeah.
I was on the team that was saving the world, and everything that I did was tied back to that and gave it so much
I know.
meaning, and it is really tough to replace that. I mean, I joke with my friends, like, if you feel that feeling again, you're probably a part of a pretty bad cult. You be careful if you get that as pure of a hit of that sense of certainty. But there's still that desire for, yeah, helping people, communicating, encouraging, like
I know.
building something, all those things. And I just see I interact with lots of different people on that same pathway, and it's just really cool to see the diverse ways that they're finding that, and I think your story is just an incredible example. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think there's part of me that really misses the structure and certainty. Like, I think I've have a certainty addiction,
Oh, for sure.
where there's part of me that doesn't like not being certain about stuff because
Mhm.
I get kinda jealous. People are like, "Well, it's this way," and I'm like, "Man, there's a lot of safety in that, isn't there?" It feels
Definitely.
really
Yeah.
cool, but, it also robs a lot of the magic too.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you break down a typical week for you?
Mhm,
You talk about, shooting videos on the weekends, and obviously you have the client work
mhm,
that you do. You're a mom.
mhm.
Um, but how do you divide your time between working with clients, creating content, study? It's obvious that you love to read and consume a lot of different resources. Like, do you have a very structured approach to things in terms of how that unfolds during a week?
I am the lamest person you will ever meet in your life. I am boring. I don't have a social life, and I work constantly. No, like, really. Now, granted, I love
Uh,
it all, and this is what I choose to do, but literally my weeks are dropping the girls off to school, 8:30, I meet with my team, and then I work until I pick them up, um, concentrated on the business, Monday through Friday, heads down, focus.
And when you say on the business, that those are your clients
My
that you're doing
clients,
fractional
yeah.
COO work for.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
so it's a lot of client calls because a lot of the work I offboard to my VAs.
Mhm.
So I'm managing them on the fulfillment side and then just doing a lot of calls, just constantly meeting with folks. People love Zoom. So that's my day. When I pick the girls up, there's that, and then my late afternoons and then after dinner is creativity. So normally what I do is I'm trying to do all writing in the evening. I think
Mm.
I can sit on the couch with them and write or outside on the porch or whatever. So I'm still around them.
Mm.
But I can just kind of throw up on a page. So usually during the week, that's what I do. Sometimes I'm stuck editing a video because didn't get it done in time. But that's usually it. On the weekends, every Saturday ritual for the past 6 years is production. So I'm filming, I'm editing. I do that most of the day into the night. Sundays usually you're looking at me like, "Oh my god, this girl's crazy."
I am so inspired and challenged. This is incredible.
Sunday is rest day, which I'm not very good at. Usually it's ideation. So I spend a lot more time writing. I love reading. I read every morning, usually workout reading. I have a strong morning routine. I just
When do you wake up? What time do you wake up?
usually 5. My goal is a little earlier. I always set it for 4:45, but I don't usually get up by then, but usually by 5.
So that's when you're getting the reading and
Oh, it's
done
the best
before you
part of the
take
day.
the girls to the yeah.
Best part of
And
the
what
day.
time do you go to sleep?
I'm gonna grab my old grandma, usually at 9. I'm in bed by 9.
9, okay,
I know,
alright.
dude, it's so lame.
And are you married?
Yes. Yes.
Does he get that 8:45 to 9 p.m. slot? Is that what when is
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. No, I love the way that you're approaching that with your VAs. How do I find a good VA? And are you a big proponent of virtual assistants?
I think yes. Before hiring an employee full time, I would go the VA route. I've had a lot of success with those in the Philippines.
Mm,
Um, they're wonderful. Now you have agencies that'll hire out VAs, but I've gone through referrals. So people I know who have VAs, I'll ask them to ask their VA if they have someone who needs a job, and I've had just great
mm,
experience with them. They work usually overnight, so while I'm sleeping, they're working, and then they'll meet with me in the mornings, and they're usually in bed by the time I'm eating breakfast. But um, I advocate for that over an employee first because I think it's a helpful way to build out systems. Because
mm,
that's usually one of the first things I do when I brought like Ruthie on. She's helping with the media side to stuff. I'm like, okay, I normally schedule the show here, here, here. I do the show notes here, blah, 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 blah. I'll verbally tell her that, put it into a process. So she'll type out everything, put it into a template, and be able to duplicate that on daily tasks. And the good part about that is, God forbid, I'm having a Ruthie. Now, when
yeah,
Paul comes in, I can be like, hey, Paul, here's the
mhm.
system. Ruthie already made it.
Which
So,
is what these businesses that you work with need as well, right? Yeah,
yep.
those systems so they can be
I
repeated.
feel like you know
That's
everything
that's
about
really
me,
good.
Josh. Like, this has been
This has been such a fun conversation. I think this is so wonderful. Um, looking ahead, is there a particular project that you're excited about?
I'm gonna say a project. This is not a project, but I told you at the beginning before we hit record, um, seeing my girls get older is
Mm,
so cool. Um, I'm gonna cry thinking about it, and that's something I get torn about too. Is I am so busy, and feel a lot of tension with the balance between them seeing their mom run after it, and then also to being present and
mm,
really being intentional in their lives. I didn't really have that growing up.
mm,
Um, so I'm looking forward to our relationships changing. Lucy's going to middle school this next year, and we're having different kind of conversations than we used to. It's so most of the time I'm saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. But meeting, like, your kids as an adult, like I was telling you, listening to that interview with your daughter, I thought that was so cool,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
getting to have that relationship with them one day, I
Mm,
just what a gift,
that's
man,
awesome.
isn't it cool?
That's a beautiful answer. I love that. Um, if people were to start with one episode of your podcast, which one would you recommend? I'll put it in the show notes so they can easily link to it. You've interviewed some
Well,
amazing
hopefully
people,
the one
Seth
with you,
Godin.
because I'm trying to get you on the show, and, you
Oh
haven't
my
given me a yes
gosh.
yet, but
Wow.
I'm um,
I'm
just saying it.
I'm a little intimidated because you've been such an incredible guest. I'm
Oh,
not sure I could
whatever,
live up to that, but
whatever.
it would be fun to talk to you again for
The
sure.
one I do with Josh for sure. I really loved the recent conversation I had with Sean Tucker. He's a photographer out in England, and we had a really deep conversation about the meaning behind what you make and finding purpose
Mm,
again. He was a former pastor and turned into a street photographer. And we
whoa,
talk a lot about the tie between spirituality and creativity and kind of finding calling again through creative work. And it was such overly deep but badass conversation. So I would start
that's
there.
cool.
Yeah,
Okay, that's great.
yeah.
We'll link to that one for sure. What's the best way for people to connect with you? I mean, following you on Instagram.
That's it.
Yeah, that's where
Yeah,
you want people to start?
slide in the
Okay.
DM, say hi.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. Heather, thanks for the amazing conversation. I really enjoyed
You
it.
have a great podcaster voice. You should do this.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I appreciate
This
that.
is fun. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.